Alrighty, welcome back everyone. We just talked about the next head coach to possibly win their first national title. I'll take my pick. I'll go with Steve Sarkisian for the time being. I do think that's going to be the next guy to win one. There's a lot of really good names, including Dan Lanning, including Marcus Freeman, and maybe James Franklin in 2025 can make that little bit of a run. But let's get into my favorite draft prospects. We'll get into part two here. A couple of different guys that I didn't have a chance to get to yesterday. Definitely want to unpack for you today. And let's go ahead and jump into this thing. And we'll start with a guy that might be a little bit overshadowed somehow with the team that he was on, and that is Lathan Ransom, the Ohio State safety. This is a guy that did not get nearly enough love this past year because of the guy he was playing next to. Caleb Downs takes a lot of the energy out of the room when you're talking about safeties at Ohio State, but this guy is very smart. He's very tough. He's incredibly good at coming downhill and playing the run game very well. He's a guy that does need a little bit of work in coverage at different times. We'll see a couple of breakdowns in coverage, and a couple of guys around him have been really helpful to kind of help him in that journey. But I do think there's a world where he gets put into the right situation where he's playing, say, a boundary safety, and he's in a position where he has a really good free safety on the other side. He has some very talented corners. I think he's going to be more than fine and be a very, very useful player where I don't know. The only person coming or only team coming to my head right now is the Falcons because I'm a Falcons fan. But at the end of the day, could be very useful for a number of different teams out there. He had a sack, 3 forced fumbles, and an INT last year. He's a guy that can make every play you possibly want him to. Now, the coverage might be something you have to work on just a little bit more, but when you have a guy that plays the run that well and plays that aggressive and that passionate, I'd take the chance on him and let him figure out some of the kinks. So really like what Lathan Ransom has been able to do. I think coming back to Ohio State for another year was huge for him, and now he moves on to the next level and cannot wait to see what he can do. Brashard Smith is someone I want to talk about. I absolutely love this kid. He moved from wide receiver to running back this past year, went for 1,300 yards and 14 scores on the ground for SMU this year, and was a huge reason why they were able to get as far as they were. This is a dude that can make every single play, and frankly, there is a spot for this type of guy on every single roster across the league. If you are a true receiving back that can find tons of openings and you can utilize them in tons of different ways, you are going to have a job. That's just the reality of football right now, where if you have a gadget guy that you can play around with, a Isaiah McKenzie, an Xavier Worthy type player for the Chiefs possibly, he is someone that could do that type of thing. Now, I don't know if he necessarily has the outright speed of all those guys. He probably is very close, if I'm being totally honest, but he can absolutely be a guy that you use as a gadget player, you use as a returner on kickoffs, and then say slowly develop into a back that you can really use long term. He's a little bit undersized, there's no doubt about that, but a lot of people were saying James Cook was undersized when he walked out of here, and this guy still has tons of ability to be found in the running back position. The size isn't ideal, but I think the speed makes up for it, and I think whoever drafts him is going to get plenty of use out of Brashard Smith. Shemar Stewart is someone we talked about a little bit yesterday, and a guy that I just really, really like. I don't think there's a world where he is not someone that has a long NFL career, not necessarily because he's this absolute beast of an athlete, or he's someone that is totally going to tear apart people right from day one. He can play anywhere. He can play anywhere across the defensive line that you need him to play. So he can play a 3-tech and be a real defensive tackle. If you want to put him at nose guard, that might be a little aggressive, but you're welcome to put him at the 1-tech and just see what happens. And then you can put him outside. You can put him outside and let him be a true pass rusher. And we were talking about it yesterday with my guy Anthony that you have a team like the Dolphins that have a Chop Robinson on one side. You need a stabilizer on the other side. You need a guy that can really play the run, that can push guys back into the line of scrimmage, that can push them back to all the tacklers in the middle of the field. That's going to be this guy. He's incredibly, incredibly smart, has really long arms, absolutely can set the edge, and he's going to be a really, really special player. I don't think his ceiling is even close to where he is right now. I think he can be a much better pass rusher, but more than anything, while he's figuring out the pass rushing part, he can be an elite player in the run game, and that's exactly what everyone needs from their edge rusher. If you can set the edge in the run game, you are going to be a long-time edge rusher in the NFL, and I think Shemar Stewart can do that just about as well as anyone in the entire draft. Alec Ayumenor, a very talented wide receiver from Stanford. This is a guy that I love for two very, very big reasons. His 50-50 ball ability is absolutely insane, and his run blocking is about as good as you're going to find across this entire wide receiver class. And if you can do those two things, congratulations, you're going to be in the NFL for about a decade. You can do a number of things with guys that are 6'2", 210, like this guy is. Went for over 800 yards in the past 2 seasons, over 1,000 the year before this one, and he's a guy that you can put him in as a starter right away. I'm not necessarily saying he's going to be your number one wide receiver and totally tear people to pieces. What I am saying is he can be your wide receiver 3 and set the edge in a run game, can do incredible things as a lead blocker, and is a guy that if you need that one play in the red zone, the hands are elite, the body control is great, and he's absolutely someone that can make those 50-50 contested plays that a lot of guys you're going to need are going to be able to make. So very impressive player. I don't see him being a downright star at the next level, but I think it's going to be really hard to keep him off a roster, and he's going to be a guy that these whatever fans he gets drafted to are going to end up loving, because he is not afraid to get down and dirty, to do the dirty work for whatever team he's on, and he is very good at doing that dirty work. Alfred Collins is the other guy that we talked about yesterday at the defensive tackle position, and he's a guy that can absolutely fly up the boards over the next couple of months, because when you look at this guy on paper, the measurables are absolutely ridiculous. He can do a number of different things. You can play him at a number of different places. I mean, early in his career, he was an outright edge rusher when he came into Texas, and they slowly moved him inside because he got a little bit bigger. That was kind of where he fit, but again, like Shemar Stewart, play around with him. Put him in a number of different techniques, put him in a number of different places, and see how he can affect the play, because he's a very athletic kid, a guy that can make so many different plays on the football field. And you look down what he could do throughout this draft process, I think his measurables are going to be about as good as anyone in that entire group when you get to the combine. And I think he's one of those guys that you might be able to pick him up in the late second round, early third round. You're probably going to really love to get him there, if I'm being totally honest. He is a very special player, and a guy that I still think hasn't quite hit his ceiling, because he was playing edge rusher for so long. He was that edge rushing, really athletic kind of pass rushing guy, and now you move him to the NFL. He has a little bit more time to get comfortable at defensive tackle. I think he could be downright special. I think he'd be one of the best pass rushing defensive tackles in the entire NFL, and I think he's a guy that is going to be really hard to keep off the field, because his stamina is absolutely incredible, the athleticism is great, and you can play him in just about any technique that you possibly want. So he's a guy that I think you might be able to buy low right now. I think you're going to be selling really high in a couple of years, because I think the growth of this guy is still yet to come, and I think there's a lot of incredible things that he's going to be able to do over the next couple of years. Tez Johnson is another guy that I absolutely love, and there's a number of reasons, and a number of them are just the person that he is off the field. Every time you see a video with this kid, every time you hear him talk, you become a bigger fan. There's no doubt about that. But more on the football side of things, the route running is just ridiculous. It is incredible how he gets in and out of breaks. It's incredible how he breaks down at the top of routes. The guy's releases are about as good as you're going to find in the entire group, and he's someone that is going to do incredible things at the next level. Now, I do want him to go to a very specific team. I'll be totally honest. I'm a little bit biased on this one. I badly want him to go to the Broncos. If you know the story between him and Bo Nix, that was essentially his brother when they were growing up, and a guy that they have had an incredible relationship. When Bo Nix was at Auburn, he was at Troy. Then they both move up to Oregon and have an incredible career together. Would love to see them find their way to be on the same team one more time, and I would love to see them both in Denver. That being said, wherever he finds himself, he is going to be a star to me. He is a guy that I think the bag is remarkably deep when it comes to a route tree perspective, and he's going to make big plays. That is just the nature of what this kid brings. When you have that breakaway speed, when you have the shiftiness that he has, he's going to make big plays for you, one way or another. You just got to give him the keys, give him the openings, and then let him run. So he's going to be a guy that, regardless of where you put him on the field, regardless of what route you want him to run or how you want him to run it, he's going to be able to do it, and do it at a very high level. I still think there's certain things that he needs to get a little bit better on, including the physicality at different parts of the route, but overall, very talented kid, and a guy that, if you use that type of speed the right way, you're going to have a lot of very nice results. Chris Paul Jr. is the other guy I want to talk about, and he screams 10-year vet to me at linebacker. He is a remarkably good player. He plays the run about as good as anyone you're going to find in this class, and is very smart in coverage. Not necessarily elite by any means, but absolutely is a guy that can play the hook coverage and play a running back coming out of the backfield, can play a tight end every now and then when you very much need him to. The biggest thing to me is his closing speed is incredible. If you use him as a possible spy in different situations where, say, you're playing a Lamar Jackson, or you're playing a running quarterback that can make you hurt, a Jaden Daniels. This is a guy that can really be a spy and then close down space very quickly. Now, there is a couple of questions there. There is a couple of questions with his size, with his ability to play middle linebacker at the next level. I think he's going to be more than fine. Had 3.5 sacks, 86 tackles, 1 forced fumble, 1 INT for Ole Miss this past year. I think he's someone that, if you have a young team right now, let's say it's the Panthers or someone like that, you have a young team that needs kind of that center that they can build around on the defensive side of the ball. I think this could be the guy. I think he could be an anchor for a team for a very long time. I think he can make a GM very, very happy. And frankly, I think he's going to tear apart interviews as well as just about anyone. He has a remarkably good head on his shoulders, and I think they're going to tell right away that this kid would run through a brick wall to get to the football field every day if he had to. He's a remarkably good player, and whenever he plays on the football field, it's just a guy you want to coach. So cannot wait to see what he can do at the next level, and think he's just going to be a very long-time player at the linebacker position. And then we'll talk about Jack Bech, a player that went through some tragedy here recently. We talked about it on the show, the tragedy of losing his brother in the New Orleans attack around the Sugar Bowl. He's battled through that. He has obviously had to deal with that, as has his whole family, and he's at the Senior Bowl right now, and he is catching a lot of eyes. He has been a remarkable player, one of the guys that probably has been one of the bigger standouts of the entire thing. I think there's a number of guys that have stood out in a number of different ways. Mike Green, the edge rusher from Marshall that we talked about yesterday, being one of them. This might be number 2 or number 3. Really remarkable player and did an incredible job this year. I think the best thing about him is he's remarkably good at tracking the ball while it's in the air. The body control is great, and he can do some acrobatic catches that a lot of guys can't do. Really, really remarkable hands, and he's someone that I really do think has the ability to really, whatever NFL team he's on, be a very useful player for a very long time. I don't necessarily think he's going to be a wide receiver 1 or tear the league to pieces by any means, but I think he's too smart of a player. I think he's too capable of a player that has too deep of a bag to not be in the NFL for a very long time. Very complete receiver, and a guy that continued to kind of bounce around throughout his college career, but finally found a landing place at TCU and did an incredible job over the last couple of years, and obviously has battled through some things off the field that are unlike anything that we can possibly fathom. So going to be a really interesting player to watch. Obviously, I am rooting for him, as are a lot of people around that realm, but remarkable player nonetheless, and definitely a guy that I cannot wait to see at the next level. I think he's going to be a 10-year vet for someone as a wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 3, maybe an Adam Thielen type guy. Definitely will be interesting to watch that unfold. But let's take our third break here. And when we come back, let's do our way too early 2025 superlatives. I'll give out what I think is the best quarterback, best offensive and defensive player, the sleeper of the year, some different stuff right after this, so stick with us.